In a series often characterized by light and life, Majora's Mask is often applauded for being the Dark One. But what exactly does that mean? Sure, the apocalyptic countdown is oppressive, the sound design is melancholy, and even minor characters wrestle deeply with their own mortality. But why is that compelling? Why do we connect so deeply with these weighty tales of loss and despair? And why has this weird sequel emerged as one of the most profound, singular experiences in all of gaming? Hi there, my name is Daniel, and I think The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is pretty creative. Everybody loves a good deadline, right? I know. Being under the gun of a timer isn't exactly my definition of a good time. But if you were working for Nintendo EAD around the turn of the century, you'd know that sometimes the urgency of a deadline can lead to some interesting outcomes. To say that 1998's Ocarina of Time performed well would be a gross understatement. Link's first foray into 3D revolutionized what Zelda could be, and it laid a firm foundation for this future dimension of gaming. So while Ocarina's 4-year development cycle certainly paid off, the devs were not looking to reinvent the wheel with their next entry. Why not just reuse these assets to pump out a souped-up version of Ocarina with remixed dungeons and additional content? Well, that was Miyamoto's idea, but recently promoted series director Eiji Aonuma thought they could do better. The two agreed that a new title reusing Ocarina's assets would be the best way forward, with Miyamoto's idea being tabled, for the time being. There was just one small catch. Aonuma's team was only given about a year to work on their sequel. 1 year to follow up on their most successful, influential game. Needless to say, time was not on Aonuma's side. Or was it? Because while 2000's Majora's Mask would never even come close to outselling its predecessor, it has since become one of the most beloved titles in the entire series. So much so that following the release of Ocarina of Time 3D, thousands of fans petitioned for Nintendo to give this game the same treatment. And while they most certainly were working on it before this petition, Grezzo did eventually bring Ocarina's brooding younger brother to the 3DS, at which point many of those same fans rose up to complain about it. And honestly, I get it. There are a lot of changes in this remake that try to fix what the devs perceived as shortcomings in the original, many of which were never actually issues in the first place. It looks great though, which is why I personally recommend Project Restoration as the definitive way to experience Majora's Mask. This brilliant mod by Leo Etlino marries the best qualities from each version, and even brings new quality of life improvements like mask shortcuts and an HD HUD. If you're interested, check out the link in the description below. If Ocarina was a marathon, then Majora's Mask was a sprint. There simply wasn't enough time to flesh out every idea to expand upon its predecessor, so the Zelda team instead turned its attention toward depth rather than breadth. How can we get the most out of what we already have with Ocarina in order to create a brand new experience, totally unique from the original? Well, if you want to know what they landed on, all you gotta do is look up. Oh my goodness. After getting mugged on the outskirts of Hyrule, our hero Link falls into an alternate universe? Look, I don't know, but the point is, it's not Hyrule. The land of Termina, as the name suggests, is about to meet its end at the hands of this dude, the Skull Kid, who's been possessed by an evil deity living within the Majora's Mask. Hey, it's the thing from the box art. Skull Kid is literally pulling the moon itself, crashing down to destroy the world. And after just 3 days, that's it. Everybody dies. Now, the Zelda series is no stranger to power-hungry maniacs trying to destroy the world. But this feels different. There's something genuinely despair-inducing about the senseless destruction of Majora's power. Almost as if you're fighting against death itself rather than an actual person. I mean, yes, we're talking about the same creature that acts like this. But let me tell you, I have never experienced anything as overwhelmingly oppressive from another video game. Let's see you compete with that, Ganondorf. And crucially, these stakes are not just communicated in a cutscene. No, the reality of imminent death is placed in front of you the entire time. Between this clock on the HUD, the foreboding title cards, and the frickin' moon itself, Majora's Mask is never shy about reminding you that, guess what? The world's about to end. And I mean, sure, the Song of Time's major glow-up does give you an almost godlike level of control here, but you can never actually stop the inevitable, only delay it. Just like the dev team when making this game, every player who experiences Termina will be painfully conscious of time's unstoppable flow. And of course, this has a massive effect on the gameplay as well. Just about every interaction in this world happens in real time, which cranks the urgency up to 11 when you have just a few hours to complete an entire quest line. But it also allows the citizens of Termina to really come alive, since each one has their own schedule and priorities. Cafe, Andrew, Romani and Cremia, the Gorman brothers, the freaking postman? Each of these characters occupies a unique space in this world and are connected to one another through a network of quests and side objectives. This interlinking web of characters and events forms what Aonuma calls a miniature garden, and by condensing both the timeline and the world itself, the Zelda team was able to sell the illusion that these are all real people, as opposed to their mostly generic counterparts. Whereas most game worlds seem to exist outside of time with no real sense of urgency, Termina is absolutely ruled by it and constantly reminds us that every single moment is precious and fleeting. So let's talk about this twisted alternate world for a moment, shall we? Termina exists as basically a mirror of Ocarina's Hyrule, which from a development standpoint makes total sense. With loads of hand-me-down assets from the previous game, Aonuma's team was free to focus their efforts on creating new experiences for players. Whereas Hyrule's landscape has been largely consistent up to this point, just about every one of Termina's ecosystems offers up a first for the series. And then there's Clocktown, which acts as a literal hub for pretty much everything Majora has to offer. It's centrally located, filled with side quests, and it even acts as a symbolic poster child of the game's primary themes. As opposed to the medieval, fantastical vibes of Hyrule's culture, there's something distinctly relatable about Clocktown's more modern setting. Rather than escaping to a distant land far from the troubles of our own, Termina's central city reminds us that this dying world isn't so dissimilar to the one we call home. And a lot of those parallels are reinforced by the various cultures within Termina. Our mirror dimension, of course, contains all the tribes we'd expect, but Majora brings them far beyond the generic caricatures of previous titles. From the tribal monarchy of the Deku Scrubs to the familial ties that bind the Gorons, all the way to the music-loving Zora. Each of Termina's people groups feels rich with culture that builds upon their Ocarina inspirations. And that's not even to mention the undead kingdom of Icona, which is home to some of the weirdest stuff in the entire game and is unlike anything we've ever seen from Zelda, before or since. These cultures are made all the more impactful by the game's signature mask transformations, which, while they are horrifying to behold, give us some of the most unique and cathartic experiences in the entire series. Of course, Link will be spending a large portion of his adventure as a Hylian, which is pretty much unchanged from Ocarina. We're still slicing, rolling, and spin attacking, but now we've also added some fancy acrobatics to the mix. A quick look at Link's inventory, however, will show that he seems to be missing a few key items, and that's because they're actually housed within our new forms. Deku Link's bubble shooting sort of acts like our slingshot, Zora Link's fins can be launched as boomerangs, and Goron Link basically is the Megaton Hammer. These familiar mechanics then interact with unique physics and new methods of traversal to make each form truly feel like its respective race. Because these aren't just gameplay systems. You really are inhabiting the body of a Deku Scrub, a Goron, and a Zora. These characters have died, and through the Song of Healing's melancholy notes, they're finally allowed to rest. By literally forcing us to walk a day in their shoes, these masks give us empathy for our heroes and their struggles. It's gameplay, narrative, and world building, all wrapped up in a single genius mechanic. I love it. But the dungeons are where these masks really come alive. So far, pretty much every Zelda title has given us around 8 to 10 main dungeons to explore. And starting with Link's Awakening, each one has also been themed around a particular key item. Majora's Mask, on the other hand, shrinks that number down to just 4, with each focusing on an overarching theme that requires the use of both Link's corresponding form and a key item. These themes then work in tandem with the increasingly complex architectural mechanics of each temple to provide a set of demanding yet intuitive challenges. Woodfall explores distance in these vast open rooms, focusing first on Deku Link's abilities before giving you the bow to activate this central mechanism. Snowhead is all about ice, from melting ice to punching this central pillar, all the way to thawing the literal goat of Zelda bosses. What a freaking blast! Great Bay's assignment is manipulating water, requiring you to direct its flow before traveling through it and later freezing it with the ice arrows. And finally, my all-time favorite, the Stone Tower Temple requires mastery of your entire arsenal and pushes your spatial awareness to its absolute limit in some truly mind-bending puzzles. And oh yeah, I haven't even mentioned the stray fairies. As if navigating these spaces wasn't enough, we've also got this whole list of side objectives to complete. Now, these can definitely complicate the way forward at times, and some do feel pretty disconnected from the larger dungeon theme. But I personally love having something to collect in these temples. Plus, who doesn't want some good old magic upgrades at the end of the day? At this point, it's worth pausing to reflect on our journey a bit. We've traveled to the 4 corners of the world, freed all the giants, and we're ready to return to the clock tower at the end of time to settle things with the mask itself. But if you've only been following the main story, you'll only have 7 of 20 total heart containers, as well as only 6, maybe 7, of 24 total masks. The rest of them, as well as some bottles and other upgrades, come from the absolute wealth of side quests throughout Termina. Now, having a lot of side content in an adventure game like this kinda just comes as a given today. And heck, the Zelda series itself is probably the clearest example of this. But with Majora's Mask, I hesitate to even call it side content, because it feels like a disservice to this world to not complete everything it has to offer. Termina is packed with minigames, optional challenges, and multi-day quests, most of which are pretty engaging and offer a meaningful reward. And I've got to give a special shout out to the spider houses, which condense Ocarina's gold Skulltulas down to a couple mini-dungeons. These 2 densely packed areas feel much more engaging than just killing a spider every once in a while, and they provide a nice collection-driven alternative to the game's main dungeons. But the beating heart of Majora that stitches all this content together is this right here. The Bomber's Notebook isn't just a quest log, it's a calendar. I mean, sure, the ability to view active and completed quests is a gift from the 3DS remake, but I love how the traditional view organizes objectives by person and time. From a practical standpoint, it's easy to make plans for a 3-day cycle, since you can see exactly when you need to take action in a specific character's schedule. But on the narrative side, these timelines also provide a visual representation of people's lives. The old lady from the bomb shop may not have a name, but she has a spot on this calendar and places she needs to be. She has a purpose in this world and people who care about her. And how about Anju and Cafe? I mean, this is the low-hanging fruit of Majora's Mask conversations, as I don't know if there's a more complex or rewarding quest in the entire series. For the most part, these characters in our notebook are responsible for providing our remaining 17 masks, and once you've got them all, you're rewarded with a manifestation of Termina's hopes, memories, and pain, the Fierce Deity's Mask. And true to its name, this final transformation levels up our hero to literal god tier with power so overwhelming it can decimate any of the game's bosses, including Majora itself, within a matter of seconds. Now that's how you do a freaking completion bonus. Majora's Mask isn't just a fantastic video game. It's a deeply personal journey of grief, hope, and reconciliation that stands alone within pop culture as a whole. What began as a year-long sprint to capitalize on Ocarina's success has become a powerfully honest and uniquely relatable masterpiece all its own. It honestly feels strange comparing this game to other Zelda titles, because there's nothing else in this series that even slightly resembles it. This isn't an upbeat quest through a fantastical kingdom. It's an urgent, oppressive mission to save the world from annihilation. Termina is a world of pain and death, suffering and remorse that hits home in a way I've rarely experienced in gaming. And for that reason, even though I love Majora's Mask, I don't always enjoy returning to it. Because honestly, the last thing I want after a long day at work is a painful reminder of existential dread. But you know what? I need that. For so much of my life, video games have been my primary outlet of escapism, a way to relieve stress and forget about my problems for a little while. And while that's certainly not a bad thing, I can all too easily use these far-off lands as a crutch to postpone my return to the land of the living. I'd much rather tackle a few more shrines than worry about my taxes. But with Majora, there's no avoiding reality. Time is fleeting, and death is inevitable. I've probably got about 90 years in this life, and I've already lived 28 of those. How am I using the time I've been given? Am I wasting it away, or am I invested in bringing restoration to the world around me? Because that's the other truth of Majora's Mask. This world is valuable, people are valuable, and time is valuable. If you've been following the channel, then you know I'm a Christian. And while I honestly get so overwhelmed at how broken this world is, I believe it's been created by God and is worth restoring. My time in this life is a gift, and I want to use it to speak life, truth, and restoration to the beautiful people God has given me. That's why I started this channel, and I am beyond grateful that I've gotten to share this journey with you all over the past couple of years. Thank you for the support you've offered and the encouraging conversation you've brought to each episode. If you're new, thanks for checking out the episode. There's plenty more coming in 2024, so feel free to subscribe and check out the other content on the channel. And in the meantime, I want all of you to know that you are loved, you are valuable, and you are creative. God bless y'all. Have a great day.